Welcome back to the Piping Pastor. Today we'll be getting back into our Poetry in the Bible series by taking a look at the poetry of Pablo Neruda and the idea of positive masculinity. Well, before we begin, I am today in my Scottish freehand pipe that I picked up in Leith, the maker of which I still don't know. There's a maker's mark on there. I circulated the picture around and still no one has any idea who made this. But I know the maker was Scottish. That's about the extent of it. And in it, I am smoking my bijou mixture. So the started with the bijou I got from Cornell and Deal, and then it added equal parts Latakia and Black Cavendish, the blending components I picked up in London where they're on holiday. So it's like, a third each, basically. And my tamper is my little William Shakespeare tamper that I also got when we were there on holiday with this pipe, actually. And I'm happy to say I got my Christmas cake started. Well, actually, a week ago now, 10 days ago. I saw the video Brother Bob did on his cake. And I shared, I really miss the Christmas pudding and Christmas cake from when we lived in the UK. So he said, start baking. And I was like, roger that. I think I will this year. So it started a bit later than I properly should have. But I got the fruit soaked, or the dried fruit soaked, and got the mixture all done up. And the kids came downstairs like, oh, it smells like we're back in Scotland. So we're looking forward to cutting into that on Christmas. The other thing, I want to give a nod to Brother Rob on his recent video on flannel. It was a great thing for me to see as a men's fashion enthusiast, someone else taking it seriously and doing a bit of research. It's interesting because you see so many aspects of classic men's fashions that began as just practical things. The pattern that's most often associated with flannel is plaid, of course. And in point of fact, I'm wearing one of the derivatives today. I have my Prince of Wales check trousers on. And that came about because it was practical sporting wear at the time when you're out hunting and so on and so forth. And so the royals would go into their country estates and see the townspeople and the beaters and so forth out in their tweeds and their flannels and this plaid kind of check pattern. And they thought, that looks neat. That looks appropriate. Maybe we should do that. And that's how Prince of Wales check became a classic pattern in men's suits based on that. And that's how flannel became a classic fabric for men's suit as well. In point of fact, the gray flannel suit, the notched lapel gray flannel suit, is the workaday suit for men across the world. So the waistcoat that I'm wearing right now, again, came out of practical use. Because at the time, the pocket watch had just been invented. Snuff was popular. And so they made these little waistcoats with these little pockets so you could have your pocket watch, have your snuff, and then the pocket square, because taking snuff oftentimes made you sneeze. It's essentially the cargo pants of their day. And the reason we leave the bottom button unbuttoned on a waistcoat is because the King of England was a portly gent at that time when waistcoats came about. And it was more comfortable for him to sit down with the bottom button undone. So see, men's fashion, classic men's fashion, typically begins in some kind of a practical need, a practical use. Now, oftentimes, it's more often than anything else, it's just decorative. Which, oddly enough, is close to our subject for today. I did a video, of course, on toxic masculinity. and what that means about being inwardly weak, projecting strength outwardly. Then, of course, that begs the question, what is positive masculinity? What's a positive example? Now, we'll get into that. But before we get into that, I thought this poem that I just recently read out of my book of Neruda's collection really kind of spoke to what I was thinking about, which is social constructs dictating masculinity. Now, of course, this would also apply to femininity. However, being a man myself, I am not an expert on femininity. I don't know that I'm an expert on masculinity, but say I at least have more experience on that side of the spectrums. So, without further ado, the poem from Pablo. This is called Walking Around. I'm only going to read the first few stanzas. Won't go through the whole poem, but I think it makes the point initially. It so happens I am sick of being a man. And it happens that I walk into tailor shops and movie houses, dried up, waterproof, like a swan made of felt, steering my way in a water of wounds and ashes. The smell of barbershops make me break into hoarse sobs. The only thing I want is to lie down like stones or wool. The only thing I want is to see no more stores, no gardens, no more goods, no spectacles, no elevators. It so happens I am sick of my feet and my nails and my hair and my shadow. It so happens I am sick of being a man. Pablo wrote that in the late early 40s. And while he's most celebrated for his romantic poetry and some of his historical poetry about, revolution and so forth, this is one of the more popular poems because it speaks to the fact that he's tired of following the social constructs of masculinity. Late 30s and early 40s, South America, there were certain expectations of manhood, what it meant to be a man. He didn't identify with a lot of those. But he felt as if he had to wear that identity like a coat because that was what was expected. That's what society told him he should do. So it wasn't as if he had some kind of internal, really spiritually rooted perspective of what masculinity was. He was just reacting to what everyone else told him it should be. And it's the same all over the world, and there are different expectations for what a man is supposed to be. If you live here, or if you live in China, or if you live in South America, or Japan, or Russia, or if you live now, or 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 100 years from now, that definition changes. It moves. There's a lot of moving parts to it. The Bible says in 1 Samuel, do not look on the height or the strength, because those are the outward things that the humans see, right? God sees the heart. To truly understand what it is to be you as an individual, and again, we're talking about masculinity here, so truly understand what it means for you to be a masculine individual. That has to come from the ontological source of truth within you. If you rely on what society tells you, well, if you go back in the Victorian era, then the whole lovey-dovey, huggy kissy kind of thing, that's a masculine thing because it was thought that men had a better understanding of what love was supposed to be. So you wouldn't see women embracing and weeping and holding each other, expressing love to one another. That's something you would see men do. And masculinity, again, if you're in, Central Africa, it's going to be different than what it is in the United States. So, relying on social constructs and the time period that you're in to define who you are internally, that's like nailing jello to a wall. You have to find a deeper sense of what it is and what it means. And that's what we'll be getting into in the next video. We'll be taking a look from a Christian perspective, of course, because that's my tradition. And we'll be looking at some biblical examples of masculinity from the Old Testament, from the New Testament. And we'll be discussing like overarching principles. So it's not going to be a checklist, right? It's not going to be like you have to be a hunter and you have to, know how to change out, a transmission in a car, something else like that. It's not going to be a task list. We're going to be talking about overarching principles of masculinity and what that means and what that looks like. So the discussion can be more of a positive view, because we shouldn't just be talking about toxic masculinity, right? There's good things about it as well. And that's what we'll be talking about next time. So, but until then, Bill and I are going to go back to my pipe. Hope you have a lovely week. Always happy reading.